All right.
We're ready?
All right. We're live.
We're live. The Hunt for Success podcast, number 16. Jeff Waters, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
We're doing really good on the subscribers and the views. But if you haven't subscribed, jump onto our YouTube page. Actually, you're probably there since you're watching it right now. And click the subscribe button. You want to give a quick shout out on our social media?
Instagram, Facebook, and our website. It's all the Hunt for Success podcast. Instagram is at the Hunt for Success.
And we're getting a lot of cool followers on Instagram that are posting some pretty sweet pictures. Emery Wagner and some of the other former guests are really posting some cool stuff. Wonger.
Yeah.
So Valhalla MGL. What's MGL mean?
It's a modern gladiatorial league. So we're literally bringing back the gladiatorial sport.
So I was at lunch today with a buddy of mine, and I was telling him about me coming on the podcast. I was explaining it. I'm like, it's kind of like MMA cage, but medieval. And he goes, MMA medieval. Is that a good description?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people ask me, what is it? And I said, I want you to think UFC meets Game of Thrones. That's the tagline, really, in a lot of ways. We have the same MMA format. We do fight in a cage. The biggest difference is we use rattan weapons and armor.
What does rattan weapons mean?
So rattan's like it's like a solid core bamboo. I guess it's a part of the palm family, but it won't break, it won't shatter, it won't fracture like hardwood will, and so it allows us to have the safest avenue for.
But it still hurts.
So
these aren't metal.
No, they're made out of wood and.
But they just paint them. So
yeah. We put we'll either wrap them in athletic tape or gaffer's tape, just to cover them up. But yeah, I mean, if you could imagine getting beat with a baseball bat that won't break ever, that's kind of what fighting in that ring's like.
Well, I want to get into all the details, but first I want to tell you why I'm excited to have you on today. Because you and I have known each other for several years now, and every time I talk to you, you got some new idea, something cool going on, and it just seems like, I think, was it Roger that said, nobody wants to hear about the bad ideas I've had or the failures I've had. Everyone wants to hear about the one success, right?
Right.
And so it kind of seems like you've always been searching for that one success, and it's really inspiring to me. And that's one of the reasons why we started this podcast, right? I'm like, look all the stuff Jeff's doing. I bet we can do a podcast. So it's that fear that a lot of people have about having a great idea. My wife has hundreds of great ideas every time we watch Shark Tank, right? But it's taking that idea and actually acting on it. So you came up with the idea of creating, what would you call this, a circuit or
in terms of the league?
Yeah.
It's like we have a 12-week season that we're going to do. And so when I was thinking of it, I had a buddy that is a fight promoter down in my hometown, Salinas, California. And I thought, well, God, if he can do that, and I've got the film and television connections and background, and I know the top 1% fighters in the United States, we should be doing this. We should, even if we can't get a TV show out of it.
What kind of promotion did he run?
He just does a local MMA fight, and we're talking about, guys that are like maybe only two of the fighters in the whole night are paid professionals. The rest are getting paid because they sold tickets. Mm-hmm. They just want to fight. They just want to be seen.
Trying to go from amateur to pro.
Right. That or they're fighting in the lower ranked leagues.
Kind of like FFL in Portland. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. And similar to like how ball teams for baseball have a farm league, where they're AAA or whatever, where they're playing at the Beaverton Boilers or whatever, and next thing you know, they get pulled up and they're a farm league for the Milwaukee Brewers or whatever. So that's sort of what he was doing, and I thought, well, God, even if we can't get a TV show, we could always be like a traveling circus. And I've been fighting for 24 years, and I got paid in beer to fight at the Renaissance fairs. It wasn't like anybody ever paid us any real money. And I thought, it's about time to do it. And Game of Thrones is huge. UFC's
MMA's
killing
huge.
it.
Bellator, all the local ones. Yeah.
So that was just sort of how I kind of came up with the concept.
What's impressive is you told me about this idea in May, and it is November, and you've had one pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Right? You've had one other event here in Vancouver.
Yeah, last weekend.
And you're building a huge social media presence in less than 6 months. Or I guess that is 6 months. 6 months.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
It's been pretty quick. We're doing, I think, about, on average, somewhere between 350 and 425 new likes a month on Facebook. We're not doing so hot on Twitter. I'm not a Twitter aficionado. So anybody that can help me out, certainly.
I don't understand the whole Twitter thing. I think Twitter's kind of dead. I don't know anybody that tweets. I just want to see pictures, Instagram.
Well, I mean, off of Instagram, you can go, you can link directly to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I mean, you can interlink them all so that it'll shoot out every which direction. So
what, you've had this idea, I take it for a while.
Well, since May.
Since May. So
I think I made the Facebook page May 26th, and I think I thought of it May 25th.
So how did you get to that pay-per-view so quickly? Or talk about that journey because
that part wasn't so tough. So that when you've got a tagline like UFC meets Game of Thrones, it opens doors. People go, "What? What are you talking about?" And then at first they're thinking, "Oh, is this like wrestling? Is this staged?" And then we go, "No, this is real fighting. These guys are really fighting." Oh, come on, let me see it. And then they see it and they go, "Oh, that shit is crazy."
Can you tell us where to go to find, like, if we want to show how violent this can be and how serious it can be? Do you have a video? I have a couple.
Yeah, there should be one down below if you kind of scroll down. So yeah, this one right here in the middle, or this is kind of our trailer. That's a shorter version. It's got a little music and all that, but
you might want to mute that music, Ryan.
Yeah, probably. Well, yeah, till they start hitting, and then you want to really be able to see kind of what they do.
So is a lot of this, there's theater involved here, right? With the costumes or not the costumes, with the armor and everything. I mean, there's some theatrics. And the one I was watching before you got here, they were talking about how the guy takes pride in his armor, makes his own armor, and it's kind of, he's trying to represent a certain era or certain style. Is that correct?
Yeah, but so like these guys all come from a reenactor's background. So
what was that? Scroll. Can you go back? What was that weapon he had? That big stick.
Probably a glaive. So we have a couple different fighters.
It doesn't matter.
We have a couple of guys fighting with great swords, a couple of people fighting with glaives.
That right there.
Oh, yeah, that was a glaive, which is essentially just a really long butcher knife on the end of a stick. It's designed to hit heavy and cut through armor. That was the intention in the Middle Ages.
What kind of injuries have you had so far to show that this is...
Well, we had two knockouts, like knockouts. And then we had two technical knockouts. The TKOs come from things like armor failures or helmets break or come off. But we were really surprised, actually, to have the two knockouts. One knockout came from a hip toss. And he was already bent over, so he only fell about 2 feet, but he fell with so much force, it actually knocked him unconscious.
Did he hit, like, is it because of the armor? Like, did it hit his head or?
Yeah, most likely it was from, instead of his chin being tucked, his head was probably back and then hit. We watched the video a couple times trying to figure out how that occurred. It could also have been that he just didn't have sufficient padding in his helmet.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. What the inside of medieval helmet looks like nowadays.
That's pretty interesting. So we traditionally it would have been stuffed with a padded coif, just
A what?
a coif, basically a padded cap
Okay.
that was quilted, and then they would have a suspension. So you'd have leather tongs that came off of it, and like it would just kind of sit on top of your head, and then you would strap it into place, and it would kind of float around. The helmets now, we've got closed cell foam and combinations of different types of foam that really can give you a snug fit.
Because you don't want it loose.
No, in fact, some people even were using MMA full contact helmets and sticking them inside the helmet so that we're not getting any movement at all. I'm thinking probably as we go, as we have more and more fights, the highest number of injuries are still going to be the same ones that we have when we're doing the Renaissance or the reenactment fighting, which is going to be twisted knees and ankles, the occasional
that's like-
broken bone.
So you do reenactment fighting and real full contact fighting.
Yeah, I mean, so this came out of being part of a reenactment group that's been around for over 50 years doing medieval reenactment all over the United States. There's, I think, 80,000 paid members in the society, and probably about 30,000 paid members, and easily over 100,000 that participate that don't ever pay their fees. And you can go to almost any given weekend throughout the United States within an hour to 2 hour drive of a large metropolitan area, and you're going to find a tournament or a war that's going on where people are fighting.
But like a reenactment style.
Yeah, but they're not getting, they're not as brutal as what we're doing. A lot of, like, the group that we belong to, the Society for Creative Anachronism, does not allow for the punching, the kicking, and the grappling, just the sword fighting. And it's to a single blow. So the concept there is if you're hit with a weapon in a spot that if you were wearing armor from that time period, it would have either disabled you or killed you, then you fall down dead. That's the part where it's people come in and they see it and they're like, oh, what? You fall down dead?
Mhm.
So it's
Kind of like LARPing.
kind of LARPy, but not so much as actual LARP. But then when they see this, and they're like, you guys aren't stopping. Nobody's falling down unless they're getting knocked out or they're exhausted.
It's real combat. I mean,
It's real fighting.
So let's talk about rules, because I was watching this with Ryan before you got here, and there was a couple of times where somebody would be down on their knees and the other guy would go to hit him in the back of the head and they'd stop. So I take it you can't hit them.
So you can't hit in the groin, you can't hit in the throat between the jawbone, so you can't hit the front of the larynx. You can't hit the back of the spine.
That's the one we saw. He was going to hit him on the back, and he
Yeah.
stopped.
So, and you can't stomp the top of the foot when it's set. So in other words, you can't do a shield punch down on the top of a foot that's set in the ground. But if somebody's trying to kick you, you can hit the foot.
Can you do foot stomps?
No, and the only reason we didn't do that is because, one, it's not very sportsmanlike, and two, it leads to a higher incident of broken foot injuries. And
Is it because you guys are wearing boots? Because like in MMA, you can foot stomp.
You can't actually. You can't foot stomp in MMA. That's part of the unified rules of mixed martial arts. That was one of the carryovers that when people were reading the rules, they were like, you've got stuff in here like you can't fish hook. How are you going to fish hook through a helmet? I'm like, well, you could still get your finger in between the 1-inch gaps and you could still pull somebody's mouth open. So that's why the rules are in there. Foot stomps are not legal now. They might have been years ago.
I think he's right. I haven't seen you in foot stomps in a long time. That used to be a big thing when you get a guy against his cage and you're trying to take him down, you'd foot stomp him, right?
Right.
But now I think about it, have you seen that in a while, Ryan?
I feel like I've seen it within the last year, but maybe not.
And if it is, it's probably an illegal move. And if the ref sees it, you can lose a point from it.
So what's the rules that governs all this? You said it's the unified.
The Unified Rules of Mixed Martial Arts came out of CAMO or CAMO.
Can you pull that up, Ryan?
And that's what each state in the United States now uses as their master rules for the state athletic commissions. So whether it's Washington State or Oregon State or California State Athletic Commission or Nevada State, they're all the same. They all have the same rules.
And you got grandfathered, or not grandfathered, but you guys got put into that, and that was a big battle, wasn't it?
We got an exception. So not even an exception. There is a loophole in the rules, in the laws, which states that the athletic commissions govern unarmed combat. That's their wording. And in California, it even goes a step further and says, I'm paraphrasing at this point, but it says something along the lines of karate, kung fu, mixed martial arts, or any type of combat where a weapon is not used. So
Okay.
we went, well, we fight with weapons.
Well, but like, what about is it Kimbo? That uses the bamboo sticks.
That's eskrima. So and then you've got kendo, which
Kendo,
uses,
that's what I was thinking.
and those are not regulated.
Gotcha.
And so the state actually, when we did our first event, sent a letter to try and stop us. They sent a cease and desist letter to the county fairgrounds, and so I had to go in, and that part was kind of interesting because I had called them probably 2 months ahead of time and said, hey, we'd like to get a promoter's license. We're going to have this event. They said, well, we can't give you a promoter's license. We don't sanction that kind of fighting. Okay. So then when I get the cease and desist, I'm like, I thought you said you don't regulate this kind of fighting. And they said, well, but you're fighting in a cage, and this just can't be legal. This can't be right. So we went in and we had a meeting with the gentleman who sent the letter, the director of California State Athletic Commission, and another employee that's also a regulator. And then
These are all people for the state.
These are all people from the State of California Athletic Commission. And then on the phone were my attorneys, and then the representative from the Attorney General's office, so their attorney. And so after a while, they eventually had to determine that they had no jurisdiction over us. But what was funny was we're going through, and they're going, well, you fight in a cage. And I go, yeah, I fight in a cage. If I had a tennis match in a cage, you don't regulate tennis, do you? No. I said, then you don't regulate us. If you don't like the law, then change the law. But right now, the law says unarmed combat. You regulate unarmed combat. We're doing armed combat. And we'd love to be admitted. We'd love for you to have regulation over us, because then we could get a promoter's license. And that was kind of what hurt us initially, is we weren't able to do the pay-per-view live. We had to do it video on demand.
And that's because of the license.
Because they were afraid they were going to shut us down, and they didn't want to sell a bunch of pay-per-view ticketing and then have an event closed. They said, we went through that enough times with the UFC when it was first forming, and so it was just a big...
So now that you
mess.
have one under your belt where you didn't get shut down, is that going to open that wall, or do you guys have to get some laws written where you can be regulated?
Well, now that it happened, we have a letter from the state of California. So what I did was I sent that to the Washington State Athletic Commission and Oregon and said, if you really want to fight it, we can go for it. But we just beat the biggest bully on the block.
Yeah.
And if you think you guys have a tighter law system than the state of California, good luck. But, they just don't have the ability to regulate us. And the NFL's not regulated by the athletic commissions either, and neither is the NHL or the NBA. So, not that basketball is a violent sport, but hockey
is.
Certainly is. And there's, fighting and rules for fighting in hockey, and they don't regulate that. So there really was no reason for them to regulate us other than to try and generate tax incentives. And, they always say it's about safety, but the reality is we're using the same rules that they already require. We followed all the parameters, including, ringside doctors and medical staff, pre-fight medical clearances and blood draws. So we've done everything in anticipation of the states coming after us and saying, you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z to be compliant. Well, we're already X, Y, and Z compliant because the only difference between our rules and your rules is we fight with rattan weapons and we use this type of armor to make sure that we don't come home broken, paralyzed, or killed.
So do you kind of feel like you're paving the way for other martial arts that use weapons to start promotions like Kendo and some of the others?
Well, I'm not really sure.
Because
Kendo, if Kendo's been around, as far as I know, for more than 75 years in terms of how long it's been practiced
like a competitive.
here. Yeah. But it's an amateur sport. Now, if somebody were going to do a competitive, professional Kendo, then yeah, probably we were taking those initial steps. I just think that nobody's ever thought of doing this before. They just sort of went, well, that can't possibly be legal. And I went, well, no, unless it's specifically stated as being illegal, it's not. We're free to innovate new things until you guys come around and try and stop them.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the UFC really paved the way for all of this, and we're starting to see all sorts of shoot-offs now. If you are a member of the UFC Fight Pass, there's different grappling tournaments. There's different style of jiu-jitsu tournaments that are becoming big. The FCFF, I said FFL earlier, that's Fantasy Football League. It's FCFF in Portland.
Right.
That Chael Sonnen is part owner in. They'll do a MMA fight on a Friday night or Saturday night, and then on Sunday during the day they'll do a grappling tournament. And they've had John Jones, a bunch of huge names come do the tournament, and it's much more niche. But there's all these offshoots of martial arts that are gaining attention and gaining ground. So yeah, it'd be cool if we saw some different style of MMA or of MMA with weapons.
Well, and we're hoping that, as this sport grows, we know there's things that we have to do too to kind of make things a little more palatable. I think at first people come because they're like, it's the spectacle. They want to see the fighting. They want to see the sort of, but just like in MMA, just like in pro wrestling, just like in boxing, if we don't have backstory, if we don't have the face and the heel, if we don't present these living sort of operatic characters, then people will grow tired of it. Most of the time you watch Conor McGregor fight because you either want to see him get his ass beat or you're on Team McGregor and you want to see him destroy whoever he goes against. And all of the antics, all of the mouth, all of the bravado, all of that, it's show business. Mm-hmm. It's what we all know has to happen to get people excited. If you had a couple of librarians over there, sitting across from each other going, well, gee, Bob, I hope you have a really good fight, too. I'm going to do my best. Nobody's going to want to watch that.
And you guys are in the infant stage, right?
Yeah.
Right now, it almost seems like your biggest hurdle is the people that go, is this real fighting, or, what is this? Is it a bunch of nerds, or what's going on here? But when the stuff you've sent me that I've watched, you can start to see, this is a real deal.
Yeah.
And so I think that might be one of your biggest hurdles is getting people over that, right?
I think that's part of it. Education goes a long way. So the more people see it, hear it, experience other people that have gone to events, it'll start to grow because people will go, oh, I saw that on Facebook, but I thought it was just like some Renaissance fair. Or I thought it was just some reenactment thing. And they don't realize that we're taking the top 5% of the fighters and putting them out there to fight. And so you're not watching just two guys that normally go to the park and practice once a week and then go to a tournament and finish, 17th. You're fighting the top tier fighters, and they're wearing between 50 and 70 pounds of armor, and you watch them performing athletic throws, and they're charging each other in the ring, they're punching each other, they're kicking each other, they're spacing for range. They're pretty damn athletic for wearing, half a person
Yeah.
on top of them.
Well, and I bet you've already thinking about this, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, but really what's going to get this popular, or what's going to bring a lot of people like me in to want to watch it, is when you get that MMA guy going, look, you guys are a bunch of pansies. Give me that armor. I'll get in there and kick your ass, right?
Well, it's funny you said that. So we've had a couple people already. Chris Sunshine Williams, who just signed with Bellator,
He fought in the FCFF.
he wants to come fight. And we were talking about how we don't think it should interfere with his contract with Bellator because we're not doing MMA fighting. But he was another one of those guys that was like, oh yeah, I'll come in and I'll do this. And I'm thinking, I just started kind of laughing to myself going, man, I don't think you realize when you put that on that you're not going to move like you move
You think
normally.
you think he would train for it, or do you think he's
He
just
would
gonna be like,
have to
"Give me
train.
a-"
If we just put armor on him, I've met him a couple times. Nice kid, but he'd just get
confident.
definitely. But he'd get his ass handed to him, and if he didn't train, because this isn't just. I mean, we're talking about a whole nother level of martial arts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, in different styles, right? Because we just watched that trailer and there was like 5 different weapons.
yeah. I mean, you got to deal with somebody that's fighting with you at range with a great weapon. Somebody with a shield.
What weapon?
A great weapon, like a long sword, like a two-handed bastard sword, or a nodachi, type of. It's an extended, longer version of a katana, glaive. Those kind of long pole arms. It's a totally different fight than if you're fighting somebody who's using this type of shield, which is like a Norman kite shield, which wouldn't do well in that arena at all. Well, the guys that did really well fight with these kind of offshoot comet
Yeah, little tiny
shaped,
ones.
that barely cover their arms. They've got a good striking surface. Don't offer a lot of protection, but they really allow you to use your left or right hand, whichever hand you have it strapped to, as an extended, what piece of weaponry.
So, did you say bastard sword?
Bastard swords.
What's a bastard sword?
It was usually called like a hand and a half. So you could, if you watch Lord of the Rings, it was what Aragorn fights with. It's got a.
Are you going to Google bastard sword?
I am.
It's a.
That
Yeah,
was
it's a
the
hand and a half.
Number 2 Google search once you type in bastard.
Is it really?
Yeah, it was number 2.
Yeah, see how it's got that long versus.
All right. So
See how it's got that longer
Oh, yeah.
handle versus a traditional.
So it's like a two-hand. It's like a
It's almost like a two-handed sword,
yeah.
or a claymore in Braveheart. When
Well, I can't. What's the name of the movie with Sean Connery where he's an immortal?
Highlander.
It's kind of like a Highlander sword, right?
Yeah.
yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Don't ever do that again.
That was off the cuff.
So that's a bastard sword. So that was one question I had. The second one is, do people use MMA? Like, can I do like an arm bar and submit somebody?
Yeah, we've had people do arm bars, figure 4 leg lock, and you're going, how can they do this in armor? They do it really quickly. And
Did you just do a Hulk Hogan?
I did.
now we did have some rules changes, so we now only allow 15 seconds. Once they hit the ground, they have 15 seconds or an exchange of 5 blows to be on the ground, mostly because we don't want it to get boring.
Well, and I was wondering that because we were watching one of the fights, and every time they would go to the ground, he would stand them up.
Yeah, and that was part of it is people come to see the fighting. They come to see. Nobody really wants to watch the wrestling part and the rolling around. Grappling was vital to real sword fighting because anytime that you can get your opponent to the ground, pin their arm, pin their weapon, and then draw another weapon, stab them in the face, stab them through a through the armpit or through another soft area where you can't physically armor, that was for somebody in full plate. That was the only way you're going to kill him, anyways.
What about? Can you bring up that fight we were watching earlier?
Yeah.
What about blows to the legs?
Blows to the legs are legal.
Because I was watching one of the fights earlier, and he was just wearing brown pants. I don't know if he had armor underneath, but I'm like, I'd take that sword and hit him right in the knee.
Right.
Was it this first one?
Do guys? Do guys hold back? Like
No.
no.
Mm-mm. I mean, maybe in practice, but not when they're competing.
Yeah.
There was nobody holding back at all.
So fast forward a little bit.
All right,
Is that you?
Going to
No,
screen
that's
capture.
Will Seagram. He's a comedian. He was also our announcer. He's from Houston, but he lives here in Vancouver.
Yeah. So like those pants, those brown pants.
Yeah, so he has armor underneath it.
Okay. So if he got whacked in the knee, it's not going to blow out his knee.
Right. But he doesn't have very pretty armor underneath those pants, so they're covered up. But see how he has that comet-shaped shield versus the center punch. So the center punch is more historically accurate, but you can't. It's
See,
used
watch
as
this right here. Watch.
as a lever. Yeah,
So get back to the. He got hit in the back of the head,
and that was just a skimming blow too. That wasn't even a full.
but
Whoa.
he stops right here. He gets.
See how he's counting them out.
And for those who are listening on iTunes, it's Valhalla MGL.com is what we're watching these videos.
Yeah,
Oh, there's a knee to the head. So that was a 15-second.
right. So
Right.
once and at this point we hadn't instituted the 5 blows rule. We did that later.
So it's whatever comes first, 15 seconds. or
15
5?
seconds or 5 blows because we wanted to keep the fighting going.
Mm-hmm.
So this right here, that's Jeff Galley, who's his coach. Now Jeff's been fighting for as many years as I have, and he's only a couple years older than me. But he's been world champion longsword fighter for a couple years, and that's
So
you
world
know,
champion in what promotion?
It's historic medieval battles, so that's another
Like-
live steel group. So they fight with blunted weapons but full plate armor. This guy right here is a live steel fighter. See how his whole body's sort of encased in steel.
The guy in the black.
The guy in the black, he's got a tabard on because his armor's ugly as hell, but these guys fight in full plate armor. So the only place where he could actually get hit and have it break his arm is that small little gap right here. And I wouldn't take that risk. I'd have more armor on fighting in that league. But that's part of the other reason why I chose not to do live steel. They have,
What's the difference between live steel and what you're doing?
well, with live steel, they're fighting with real metal weapons, and the problem with that is they break. So you have shards of steel that go flying out of the cage and hit somebody in the crowd.
Yeah.
And at first they might be like, "Oh, that was great," until their attorney tells them they can make some money. So we
So
said, "No,
do the live steel fights are they not in front of a crowd or?
yeah, they usually are in their own sort of arena that they do, and most of the people that go watch the live steel stuff are their own friends and family.
Can
so
you
it's not a.
YouTube some live steel?
So it would be like Battle of Nations.
And are they here in the U.S.?
No, they're out of the Ukraine. Yeah.
Let me get back to the screen.
So he's pulling that up. So what's the end game here? What's the end goal? What are you trying to do
So
besides become Dana White?
yeah, the end goal for me is to create a TV show here out of Vancouver, and if we can get a show on one of the networks and have this be this traveling circus we talked about, we should be able to generate between 60 and 70 full-time jobs here in Clark County. And
Like production and all that.
yeah, because you're going to have logistics people, you're going to have stage managers, you're going to have grips and gaffers, to move equipment, set up lights, and do all the sound equipment. But there's also the administrative staff that we're going to have to put together. One thing that we've been working on recently is trying to get casinos to have us come as performers. And I talked to Frank Shamrock about that, and he was like, you need to get on the casino tour.
Yeah.
Because we spent a lot of money trying to rent the venue, and that was easily probably $20,000 we could have saved between hotel costs and the venue if we had just did it through the casinos. And, especially a lot of the Indian casinos around here, they've got 500 person capacity, 1,000 person capacity. So selling them out is easy. Mm-hmm. They're happy because we've sold the venue out. We're happy because there's no empty seats in the front row, second row, third row, because people are either comped those by the high roller seats are going to be comped usually by the casino, but the fact that they're picking up the bill for our housing makes a huge difference, and the fact that we're not paying for a venue makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of one of the directions we're looking at. But I want to see this.
The Renaissance demonstrations, not the full combat, right?
No, for the full combat.
For the full combat.
Yeah, do it at the casinos, and then that way the fights are set up there. We bring the ring in, set it up. A lot of times they already have rigging and lights, so we just use their equipment, their lighting, and we bring in whatever supplemental rigging that we have to put up to put our shows together. But this is the group that they sponsored our first fight.
So when you said I got live steel guys sponsored now, I was thinking it was guys like making swords live. But it's not. Yeah, so I was thinking totally different.
No, see, these guys are they're fighting with metal weapons that are blunted. The other problem with it is when you watch this, you'll notice these guys are just swinging. So there's no thrust. You cannot thrust using a live steel because you run the risk of going through an eye slot or going through the 1-inch gaps that we have in our weapons or in our armor.
Well, even a dull sword could.
Oh yeah, we've seen people get their hands cut off. I mean, this has been going on for like 5-6 years. So in the early days, there was a lot of like really insane shit that went on. Like there was a guy that got killed because the Russians hate the Ukrainians, and he was really trying to cave his helmet in with the glaive, and he did, killed the guy. There have been guys who had fingers cut off, picked them up, walked over, and handed it to the guy like a trophy. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, so that just showed the Americans' real team. The American team isn't like that. They're just normal people, but the Eastern Europeans are little crazy. But see, I mean, it looks brutal, but if you watch...
This is like team versus team.
Yeah, it's team versus team, and the rules for this are
How do you enforce rules when there's 40 people fighting?
Well, they have a couple of different marshals in the middle of that. But if you're, I think it's like 3 points of contact hit the ground. So your feet are 2 points of contact. So if your elbow hits the ground, if you fall back, if anything touches, you're out. So then it's not even sword fighting; it's freaking King of the Hill.
Yeah,
like it's just I laughed because I went, well, my buddy's the defensive coordinator at Oregon State, Kevin Clune. And I was like, hell, I'll call Kevin up and be like, okay, send me 15 of your kids that aren't going to the NFL, and I'll stick them in armor, and I'll give them like 3 weeks of sword training, and we'll go over and kick the shit out of the Eastern Europeans because they've never seen big boys that are like, 6'5", 6'6", 380 pounds and run 4.340. Those are boys that can take those Ukrainians and stick them in the dirt real fast, and that's the name of the game for that thing.
So that brings up a good point. Is this an easy point of entry for people that want to get into it?
Like, for what we're doing?
Because if I want to do MMA, I don't. But if I wanted to, I go to a gym, train, get in shape, and then do some amateur stuff, and it's fairly easy. Pretty much anybody can do it if they wanted. This looks a little more involved. Yeah,
to come to a fight at this level, definitely. But as far as getting in, they could find a live steel group. They could find the SCA. They could even start off at a LARP doing boffer fighting. Learning the fighting techniques is just the beginning. If you think about what we do, though, you have to know how to punch, kick, grapple, and you have to be able to sword fight, and then you have to train with the armor on. So there's several layers of training that you're going to have to go through just to be competent. So now we're not even talking about being dominant. We're talking about just being competent. So that's why when the MMA guys are like, yeah, I want to come do this, I think they'll learn quickly. I mean, I think any athlete, I could take college football players and I could train them within a year and a half to be
But what if Sunshine,
rock stars.
What if Sunshine gets in there and just dominates?
He could, and
It'd be awesome.
It'd be fun to watch.
It'd be really fun to watch.
I think he probably, like I said, he would need probably 6 months to a year of training. The other thing is, see, in the fight game, it's all about how thin you are, or at least not so much thin, but lean body mass, right? So you've got guys that are...
Unless you're Big Country Nelson.
Right. So then you got these guys that are, like 145 and 155 and 165. Our average fighters are between...
Can you grab a couple beers on your way back?
Sure. Our average fighters are between 190 and 215. Those are our average fighters.
Are there weight classes?
Yeah, we have 6 weight divisions. So we've got some guys that are 305 out of armor, and they're 400 pounds in armor. And when we did our demo this weekend, it was kind of funny because we put... a lot of the guys had been sick. They'd had either the flu or the cold. So instead of doing actual rounds, we just kind of did a round robin. It was a small, intimate little gathering with people that were kind of supporting us. So one of the fighters goes in, and he's a super heavyweight, and he's fighting against one of the light heavyweights. And he just stuck his head out like, do it. Do whatever you think you can do. And the guy's throwing like 4 or 5 blows, and he's just laughing like, better have something more than that. And that's the difference, I think, too. I mean, I think you would see the same thing if Big Country got in the ring with, Conor McGregor, and Conor's trying to strike him and kick him, and he's just laughing, going, look, you weigh 145 pounds. You can kick me as hard as you want. You're still probably not going to generate enough force to knock me out.
Yeah, Big Country wouldn't be able to touch him.
Right, and that's the thing. He's going to be too fast, too quick. And so, that's sort of the same premise when we're in, the armor. The guys that are fighting in MMA, a lot of them are in that 145 to 195 arena. You don't have a lot of people that are 250 pounds running around dropping bombs in MMA. But...
Say that again?
Dropping bombs?
No.
Or 250 pounds dropping bombs in MMA?
I don't know.
Like, Kimbo Slice was one of those guys he was a big guy. I mean, that's the thing. When I was a bouncer, I used to always laugh because there'd always be that tough guy, that little short guy that wanted to come in and test you or whatever. You'd let him hit you 5-6 times, and you just laugh at him. And you hit him one time, and he goes flying back 3-4 feet. He doesn't want to play anymore. And that's sort of the thing. It's like, I think what we could end up having is the MMA guys that want to come do it, most of them that I've met are all under like 175 pounds. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be fighting other people that are weighing 175 or 145.
What's the lightest weight class you guys have?
Under 165. So it's the lightweight is, I think, anybody under 165, and then welterweight is like 175 to 185. I'm not really sure. We could look it up on the rules.
Say that again.
We could look it up on the rules. I don't have it memorized. I never have that kind of stuff memorized.
It'd be fun to watch some light guys do this. Because like my favorite weight class in MMA is the flyweights. Flyweights and the featherweights. So how deep is the roster? How many fighters do you have right now?
So we have 28 fighters right now, and we need to get to 48 to have a complete 6 weight class season. And there's 8 per weight class.
So are you like recruiting? These guys aren't on contract. They're just fighting for prize money, right?
Yeah, we haven't done a contract yet. We're going to hold off on contracts until we get a deal, or
And are you going to go straight to professionals, or are you going to have amateurs that are trying to get to professionals, or have you?
we haven't really thought of it yet. I mean, we could do amateurs now for nothing. I mean, that's what we've been doing all these years. So what we're really trying to do is push for this to become a professional sport. So I've had a couple people, want to invest or ask about it, and that's kind of, but either they didn't work out or they couldn't, they had a different idea of what they thought they should get for that amount of money. And so that's kind of like a big determiner too, whether we're going to put somebody into contract. Is I'm going to wait till we either have a network deal or we have a large enough investment that we know that we're going to do a complete season. But, we're probably looking at like 1.25 million to do a season without it being filmed, and probably close to $3.5 million if we're filming it, and because of the production quality and the cost. Doing the casino deals, that should reduce some of that cost, greatly. But that's still a lot of money. And people are like, well, the people that come from film and television, they understand that concept.
And that's kind of your background, right?
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. So when I met you, I went to your. You were involved with the Vancouver Film School.
Yeah, Vancouver Film Works, and that we started that as a nonprofit so that we could take first-time filmmakers and then team them up with veteran filmmakers and collaboratively make movies that would essentially cost less money because we're not. People are doing it because they want to make movies, not because they're trying to hit a home run on the pay.
Yeah, help people
paydays.
get their start, right?
Yeah, and that was the. And really, I did it selfishly because I had my daughter was born. I had been waiting for my kids to be in high school level so I could go back to making movies, and then I had this 8-year plan. I knew what I was going to do, and then I had my daughter 5 years ago. So I was like, I'm not going to wait another 18 years to try and start making movies. So.
Why would a kid stop you from making movies, though?
Well, I didn't want to be away from my family. You got to travel a lot. Let's be honest. Movies are made in L.A. They're made in Vancouver, B.C. They're made in Atlanta, Georgia now because of the tax incentives. But they're not usually made in. And there's some being done in Portland, but it's not a huge.
The Goonies was filmed in Astoria.
Right.
So is The Ring.
Yeah, I mean, there's like in every state and every town kind of has this like anecdotal story. In Salinas, they made what was that bank robbers movie with?
Heat?
No, it was with Billy Bob Thornton, Bandits, and Bruce Willis. They shot the bank scene where they robbed the bank at the old bank in Salinas.
Huh.
But to do it for a living, to do it on a regular basis, you need to be in one of those production centers. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to move. I like where I live. I love living up here in the Pacific Northwest. I didn't want to be away from my kids. I wanted to be able to get up, go to work, and come home and do it. And surprisingly, Vancouver is pretty talent rich with folks that have moved up from LA that are some of them are still making movies. Peter Cran lives here, and he's an Academy Award winning visual effects.
We're gonna have him on the podcast.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
He's a badass.
Yeah, I mean, he's the first movie is Star Wars at 19, and he's done over 300 and something films, either himself or through the company that he started when he left ILM, and he's a rival of basically ILM. And the guy lives, 6 blocks from me in Philida. So I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of people we need to find to make movies here. Mm-hmm. So I've been screenwriting since I was 25. I wrote my first screenplay on a dare.
And you've done, like, your genre is horror movies, right?
Yeah, horror and crime is really kind of what I stick to. I grew up in Salinas, and it's kind of a rough place. So I think we're the third highest murder rate per capita
Really?
in the state of California.
Huh, I didn't know that.
So I think I was 18 the first time somebody stuck a gun to my face, like in my face, to my head. I've seen drive-bys. I've seen
Someone stuck a gun in your head at 18? What
nine
happened?
millimeter. So we had the cruise still, like you see in American Graffiti. So we still had the cruise on Main Street, and we'd hang out at Jack in the Box, which is like catty corner from Salinas High, and these two white girls from Brewndale are there, and they got their hair tied up in blue bandanas, like they're just
Gangbangers.
no, they just got their hair up.
Oh.
But these two Mexican girls come up and they're like, "What's up with the blue, eh?" And they just start socking the shit out of these girls. So, first thing we do is we, grab one of them, we're like separating them out. Next thing you know, I just hear somebody chamber a slide, and I felt cold, and I'm like, "Hey, all right." So people are freaking out. My buddy Jeff Spence gets his leg smashed between two cars because people are trying to leave. They're trying to get out of there. And so they take off, and then my buddy Jeff Wilson and I run to his truck, and he opens up his glove box and he pulls out this .44 Magnum, and then he throws me a stun gun. And I'm like, "What the fuck do you want me to do with the stun gun? You take the fucking stun gun. Like, I'm going to fucking throw this at him? Like, what am I going to do? Fucking asshole. Give me the gun." And that's just what life was like growing up there. I mean, a lot of fights.
I would love the Northwest too if that's where I grew up.
Well, like a month after we moved here, a month after we moved here, I'm watching National Geographic's like Gangland or whatever, and it's Salinas, California. I'm like, "Hey, I've been to that place. Hey, I know that guy. I was there when that," and I was like, "Yeah, we made the right choice." And then my neighbor ended up getting murdered, and I lived in South Salinas in like one of the best parts of town, across from the college, and a Mexican family had bought the house on the corner, and there were like grandparents, parents, and teenage kid living there.
Mm-hmm.
And the grandfather was out in front of his house. Somebody came by and just shot him, probably trying to shoot the kid, but killed the grandfather.
Like Gran Torino style.
Yeah, it was pretty shitty, and that kind of stuff just happens all the time. It was great for my security business, but it sucked for like raising kids. So I moved here and was like, I've never looked back. I don't lock my doors here.
So you probably should lock your doors. So why do you have this entrepreneurial spirit? Because you started a security business. You did the not-profit film school, and now you're doing Valhalla MGL. When did that start for you? When did you decide you wanted to be an entrepreneur? What's keeping you going at this?
I don't know. I think I might have gotten hit too many times in the head playing football or something. I probably have CTE. I don't know. I've always known from the time I was probably 14, 15 years old that I was going to be a storyteller. My first book I ever completed, got published, was a role-playing game. I was 23. So I started writing it when I was 21. But I knew early on I wanted to be a writer.
So you wrote a role-playing game?
Yeah, I wrote
like Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, it was called Cyberworld. It was a live-action role-playing game. So it's like improvisational street theater with rules. So I wrote that game, and then I was like, yeah, I don't need to go to college anymore. I wrote a game. And then it was like, so what's your next game? Shit, I don't have any more games. I better go back to school. So
did the game go anywhere?
We sold probably, I don't know, 15,000, 20,000 copies.
Really?
So it was fairly successful, but I didn't come from the gaming industry. I was like, we have to do more. Well, yeah, you had to make supplements and follow-ups. And so we started working on more stuff. And I dropped out of college and went back to Salinas. And that's how I ended up writing my first screenplay. It was in a writing workshop. It was a dare. I was living with my buddies in a Victorian house. We're all kind of sharing this place. And I got in a fight with my roommate, and he had the lease, and I didn't. And so I had to go. So I'm like sleeping in an office in San Carlos, California, in my dad's office. And it was awful. Like, I'd never been that close to being homeless. I mean, my parents were pretty well off. We've always owned our own business. And here I am, like, I don't know, 25 years old, going, what am I doing here? Sleeping on an inflatable mattress in an office. So that sucked. But I got a lot of writing done during that time. So I finished my first screenplay, and I sent it to a buddy of mine who, the screenplay was based off of a vampire character. We used to role play this game called The Masquerade. He ran the game. I had switched it from being a vampire story to a story about Nephilim, which are the children of angels and humans. And the screenplay was called The Nephilim.
The Nephilims are, say that again?
So they're the descendants of angels and humans.
Okay.
And so in Genesis...
Like crossbreeds.
Yeah, so Genesis 6...
You're losing Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan's like, I can't handle this.
Yeah, it's like Genesis chapter 6, verse 2, it talks about how the sons of God took the daughters of Adam and created the Nephilim. And so the Nephilim were who had built the Tower of Babel and created and pissed God off to the point that he's like, okay, I'm going to kill all of you fuckers except for, Noah. So I took this story, this folklore, and created, a series of monsters out of them. And so when I finished the screenplay, I sent it to my buddy, and he had moved to Austin and had started a video game company called Flatline Studios. And they had a game called AI, which was, I think it was like Alien Intelligence or something like that they had sold to Interplay. Well, he got the screenplay, and he made photocopies and gave it to all the programmers and everybody in it, and they all went apeshit. And then I got a call, and he's like, I got a set of tickets for you at SFO. You need to be on a plane tomorrow. We're flying you out to Austin. Chris Webster wants to talk to you about producing this movie. So I went to San Francisco State, and I bought all the books I could on directing. I had no idea how to direct. I mean, I'm like cramming for my final exam.
Sure.
And I get there, and he's like, hey, let's go. I go, no, I can't talk to you. I got to read this shit. So I just locked myself in the room. I don't even talk to them the first day that I'm there because I'm studying to figure out how to act or do directing. I ended up negotiating a contract for $1.2 million where I got to direct, and they were buying the rights to my screenplay, and then they gave me a $50,000 option. So we went into pre-production. They were going to Flatline was going to do all the CGI work for the demons. They got me a storyboard artist, and so while all that shit's going on, I fly back to my condo in the contractor's building, and I've got this big ass brick cell phone now, and my phone rings, and this guy says, hi, my name's Mike Kitchens, and I got a copy of your screenplay from Val, and Val was this guy that my buddy Aaron knew who had been a bouncer and then went to do security work for movies, worked for Mike's wife at an art gallery, and then now works for Vivid Entertainment as selling porn to Europe. That's what he does now. But at the time, he gave.
Interesting.
And I'm like going. I don't. I'm like, Val who? So I'm talking to Mike, and Mike's like, I really want to work with you. I like your. I read the script, and it's incredible. And so I'm like, yeah, okay. So why don't you send me? Here's my fax number. Why don't you fax me your resume? I'll take a look at it, and we'll go from there. Hang up the phone. Fax machine goes off. And I had and now thinking back, I had people like, what the hell was his first name? Wexler. I can't think of his name, but he was a famous director of photography that also applied to work with me on this movie, and I thought, I didn't even know who he was. Anyways, this thing starts coming over in Mike Kitchens, Wesleyan College. I'm like, Wesleyan College? Who the hell? What the fuck is that? No idea. And then at the bottom it says Academy Award Star Wars, The Godfather, Apocalypse Now. And I'm like, oh, shit. There he is. Haskell Wexler.
What a name.
And I had no idea that this guy was like...
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
He was a rock star DP. I had no idea who he was. So I had no idea what my talent, that I was that good at. I just thought, I just told a story. It wasn't...
Yeah.
And it was, like I said, it was a bullshit, like, dare thing. So I met with Mike, and he goes, so have you have a script broken down yet? And I'm like, no. And he goes, well, do you have a production board? And I'm like, no. He goes, well, you don't know what the hell you're doing, do you? And I go, no. He's all right, kid. He goes, you got balls. I like that. Okay. Come back on Tuesday and we'll meet. So I go back, meet with him, and he just shows me everything, shows me how to break stuff down. I mean, he just totally took the time to teach me how to make movies. I had no clue what I was doing, and he just said, we're going to get through this together. And that was what sort of prompted me to create Vancouver Filmworks. Here was this guy that didn't have to. Mm-hmm. They could have just said, this kid doesn't know shit, and I don't want to be like, yeah, he might be a good writer. Or try to
exploit it.
Right. And he didn't. He was just like, and his head still encourages me today to follow my passion, to follow my dreams. He's always telling me, Jeff, just keep working. He's like, you know what? Just go out there and make your thing. And once it's done, you'll have all this body of work that people will come back and they'll want to, exploit. They're going to want to put out your other 5 screenplays. You just need that one. But Hollywood's really tough. It's a lot of money, for one, to do a movie. And everything's about formula. So it has less to do with art or creativity as it has to do with bean counters and executives going, well, what is this? What does it compare to? What kind of a comp do we have for this?
Which is why movies are such crap.
They suck. That's why you're watching Spider-Man 17 and we're remaking movies from the 40s and 50s and nothing new because they don't want to take a chance. Star Wars will never get made again. A concept like Star Wars will not make it in Hollywood. Somebody will have to go out and crowdsource that money and do it on their own. Like that next, the people that we think of as, heroes or legends in filmmaking weren't at the time. I mean, they passed, I think, 5-6 times on Star Wars, and finally he's like...
But that's what's so exciting about today, right? Is you can get a couple knuckleheads that don't know what they're doing, and they can create a podcast and put it out there for everyone to see. And you see the same thing with Netflix, the Netflix movies. Have you watched any of them? You guys watched the Adam Sandler Netflix movies?
Yeah.
They're not great. There's some funny parts. But you're having all this, we could make a movie right now and put it on YouTube.
Right.
And get 1 million views and then get picked up. So it kind of seems like some of the corporate Hollywood stuff, I mean, they got to be feeling threatened. Because, yeah, we couldn't remake a Star
Maybe.
Wars, but why couldn't we? Why couldn't we make a movie that nobody really believes in and put it out there on?
Well, you can. That's the thing, though, is it takes money. I mean, people talk to me all the time. Why don't you just shoot, like, Mike's. So I had an agent. At CAA, Creative Artist Agency, and he was head of the story department. I mean, I should have been able to make movies, but the kind of movies I write, he goes, those are the movies that people make to get to where we're at, and you're trying to make these kind of movies because you need to be. He goes, best thing for you to do, Jeff, is take $1 million and go make the Modern Primitives. Go make your movie. This is like 90.
This is the movie with the half-breed angel.
No, that was the Nephilim. That one, the Modern Primitives was based on out of Salinas, and it was a group of friends rally around the son of a homicide detective who goes after the gang that killed his brother after they attack his best friend. I mean, at the time when his brother's murdered, he's terrified, but over time, just the right things happen that he has this character arc where he goes from being kind of this kid that's terrified of everything to this, in some ways, kind of a monster.
So Haswell was telling you, go make that movie.
Kitchens, Mike Kitchens. Yeah. He's like, yeah, you should just go out and shoot that. And that was the thing. So my agent, Garth, was like, there's a scene in the Modern Primitives, which was, I made it into a book, so it's a novel. You can buy it. I don't know where we're at, but
Amazon.
It's somewhere. And in the scene, they need to get a code to a safe. And so I thought, what's the best way to get somebody to open up a safe in under 3 minutes? Well, it involves your rectum and a curling iron. So he thought that needed to come out, and I said, no, that needs to stay in because that's
like Quentin Tarantino level.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I thought, well, I would comply awfully quickly. So, and then they leave it in him, and then they're in a body shop, and he's attached to a frame puller, and they just hit the button, and they pull him apart. And they were like, yeah, you need to rewrite that. And I was like, no.
Too violent?
Yeah, at the time, he thought, and this was like 2002, I thought, you got to be kidding me. What do you mean it's too violent? But he goes, that's why you need to just go make it, because nobody's going to let you do that. But if you go make it, then you don't have to ask anybody's permission. You just make it.
Well, it's like Reservoir Dogs, where the guy cuts the cop's ear off.
Right.
That was extremely violent for when that movie came out.
And then douses him in gas.
Yeah. And nobody really knew who Quentin Tarantino was, because that was like his second or third movie.
It was his first. Well, he had written True Romance.
In 4 rooms.
And then he shot.
True Romance is a great movie.
And then he shot. Then they did Reservoir Dogs. Then they did Pulp Fiction. And then I think they did 4 Rooms after Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and so he tells me, at the time, you get $1 million. And I said, $1 million? Why don't you tell me to build a rocket ship out of a goddamn garbage can? I mean,
well, what about your $1.2 million contract?
Oh, okay. So
we're all over the place.
Sorry.
It's okay.
So what happened with that was, we went through pre-production. We're just about to start production. And the same week I find out that I'm going to be a dad, my checks stop. And I can't reach anybody at the production office. They're in Austin, so I'm like calling, nothing. A week later, I get this call, and it's from Chris Webster, who was the producer, and he's like, yeah, man, I got some bad news. I had a breakdown, and I had to check into Charter Hospital, and I fucking lost it. Lost the whole thing. It's all gone. And he had put together this consortium of like satellite companies that put up $100 million cash and I think it was $1 billion line of credit to make these movies, and mine was the pilot movie. He fucked it all
You
up.
just lost the
So
nervous breakdown, or
he
what?
just had a nervous breakdown and just like, which is always like, now I'm like, okay, I'm still waiting for that breakdown to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. Because I've done
Wait till somebody gives you $1 billion line of credit.
well, I start doing like I'm always, all this stuff. There's always stress involved in any kind of production. Anytime you're putting stuff together and you're doing it and trying to figure out how you're going to make it work. But yeah, so he has a breakdown, and then I'm like, well, what the fuck am I going to do? I'm just this fucking kid from nowhere, Salinas. The only thing famous came out of there is lettuce and Steinbeck, and he hated the place. I have no agent at the time. I'm 26. I'm going to be a dad. I've burned through most of my money that I got from the option, and I'm going, fuck. So I moved back home, and I went to film school at Monterey Bay. But yeah, it was just like,
so this
and that
guy's
was
telling
the-
you get $1 million and go film
so he's
that
telling me get $1 million, which is also why, just to step it back, that's
Yeah.
also why I went and started doing the family security business. Because I had these kids. I had the first one while I'm going to film school, and then I had a second one while I'm in film school. And I thought, I can't just stop and make movies. I can't just stop and be a writer. I have to feed these kids, and there's no way that I'm going to do that if I sell a screenplay and it goes nowhere, or I sell a screenplay and it's huge and then nobody ever gives me another
You
movie.
need that steady stream.
So I was like, yeah, I didn't want to I just figured I'll always be able to write unless I have a stroke, so the intelligence will be there. The creativity is always going to be there. And as time goes by, I'll have even more life lessons and hopefully less people trying to shoot me. So
Wouldn't you say, though, there's something to be said about that young spirit, like just the not knowing but not really caring?
yeah, I think, well, like when I didn't have kids, I didn't give a shit about anything. Anything could have happened. I could flop on a couch. I could hang out and have 5 roommates and not care. Once I was a dad, and I don't know, maybe I'm different because I took parenthood to be a serious thing. I wasn't, she could have left and I still would have taken care of the kids kind of deal, which, kind of happened a lot. My first wife was a train wreck. So, but my commitment to raising my kids was huge. My dad always took care of us, but he was always working. He was never around. So that part was pretty tough. It was like, yeah, it's great you're making all this money, but nobody sees you, so that sucks. And then my parents divorced early, so I learned to play football on my own. I learned to fight on my own. There was nobody there to show me those kind of things. So that part, sucks. So when I had my kids, I was never going to be that dad that wasn't there. I was always going to be at every game. I was going to always be at every event and kind of push them to do whatever they wanted to do. But yeah, I mean, when you're young and you're naive, it's almost like you don't understand. You're not smart enough to be afraid
Exactly.
that things aren't going to work out. You're just like, oh, I'm going to be a millionaire. It's going to work. And, you're young and dumb. And
But you still got some of that, right? Or else you wouldn't be doing this Valhalla MGL.
well, I think part of it is I'm always chasing that. I'm chasing. I look at it like this. I tell myself all the time, there are people with little gold statues that want to work with me. I must have a talent that's worthy of their time, because people don't generally just freely give you your time, talent, and treasure unless they believe in what you're doing. So, people keep saying, yeah, man, I love your work. I love your writing. I want to work with you. And so I'm going, okay, well, then let's do it. And I have this deep burning passion inside that keeps telling me, this is what you're supposed to do. This is the shit you do to get you there, but this is what you're supposed to be doing with your life. I don't know if there's any great humanity about teaching people about the beauties of a curling iron or whatever, but there's occasionally some other little snippets of wisdom that I can put in my stuff that might teach somebody something.
Well, not only that, but putting something out there that stands the test of time and leaves your mark on the world, right? And that's the great thing about that form of art, is you can do something great and it leaves your mark on the world, right? Look at all the great movies and stuff that's come out where people like Marlon Brando, I mean, he'll be known forever. So,
well, in entertainment, I had an older sister. So my siblings are all older. My brother was 21 years older than me. My sister's 13 years older. So I had a sibling for like 5 years, and then after that, I was an only child. So I watched a lot of TV. I watched a lot of movies, and so for me to tell stories, to entertain people, that's like right at my core. There's nothing better. I think I was in 6th grade the first time I was ever in a play. I got to play Scrooge in the Christmas play. And I just remember being up there and looking out and seeing all these people and going, I want to do shit like this my whole life. I want to be able to entertain people. I want people to go, somehow you made my life a little better. I mean, I didn't understand that in 6th grade, but as I got older, I went, I want to write books. I want to tell stories. I want to make movies. I don't care if I'm a stand-up comedian.
well,
I want to do something that
Dana White and those
changes
guys,
people.
they've changed sports forever in this country. I mean,
Oh yeah.
20 years ago, they were laughed at. I remember getting it was like the unlimited Ultimate Fighter for New Year's Eve. My dad got the pay-per-view for me and my buddies when we were like 13. And you get like a 300-pound sumo wrestler versus a 125-pound karate guy. And now look at it, right?
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's bigger than boxing.
Yeah, because I think too, boxing couldn't keep up with the dynamics of it. It's you're not limited. I mean, in boxing, you can only fight with your fists, and you can only use the 8-ounce gloves or 16-ounce gloves. You can't grab somebody and toss them to the ground and then stomp on them and choke them out.
I guess my point is though is the Valhalla MGL now, who knows where it could be, right? And with everything you talked about, leaving your market, entertaining people and stuff, it could be a big thing. If it doesn't, you're going to have something else. I mean, with as many efforts as you're giving it, right?
Right.
It's like I said in the beginning, where you talk to somebody who's uber successful. Nobody wants to hear about their 1,000 failures. They want to hear about their one success, right?
Right.
So,
And everybody, I think it happens. Alexander Graham Bell, how many times did he fail before he finally figured out how to, make it work?
well, it's like that text I sent that night. I said, don't forget about your friends when you make it big. Because I've liked you from the moment we met, but I'm like, you know what? This guy's going to make it somewhere, and I want to be his friend when he does. So what were you going to say, Ryan?
I was just going to say, what do you have in the works right now? Like, as far as your writing, where does that stand?
So I've got 5 feature-length screenplays done. I haven't been doing any writing recently. I was working on a TV show. I've got a TV show concept that I've been trying to get sponsors for, called One Check Away. And that show, and I never worked in television. It wasn't my thing. But when I met Jonathan Weiss, he's like, oh, yeah, television, you should be able to. It's not that different from making movies. One Check Away, the concept behind that is you take millennial kids, you strip them of everything but a backpack and $500 cash, and you make them homeless for a month. And then you set up, through a third party like Labor Ready or something like that, jobs where they go. And so it's kind of part undercover boss meets survivor. They've got to go and make it and make as much money as they can legally in that 30 days.
Like climb their way out of homelessness.
Yeah. and figure out what they're going to do. And so we just follow them around. It's it would be a reality TV show. And so that's on the works. I've got another TV show that's
There's lots of candidates in Portland right now.
right. I know. I've got a scripted show that I want to do here called Fort Vancouver. It'd be like a fictional history.
Oh, that'd be cool.
So it weaves the main character worked for the Pinkertons and during the Civil War, and so that was the beginning of military intelligence in the Army, was from the people that worked in the Pinkertons. And so he's had enough of killing and everything else. He's ready to come home and just take care of the family farm, but he comes back to Vancouver to find that there are these factions that are vying for power. And so I thought it would be cool to do a Western and do it here, and then we could shoot someplace like La Center.
All right, hold on a second. If you do a Western, I got to have some sort of extra role or something.
we need a cameo.
You have to have us in there, because that's a boyhood dream of mine, childhood dream of mine for sure. A Western in Vancouver, I'm on board. Need some funding? Let's do this. How do we get it going? Who do we need to call?
Let's make it. Yeah, all we got to do, you only need I don't know,
$1 million.
$1.8 million. I think I could probably make it happen. So we could probably shoot a first season and then sell that whole season. That was what I pitched to.
So would it be like a documentary fiction like you see on the History Channel?
No, it would be like a full-on narrative show like you see, whether it was...
what's the big HBO one?
Deadwood.
Deadwood. It would be like a Deadwood.
It'd be like Deadwood, except it would
Vancouver?
be based in history, so that you would, because you had all these really great historical people that came through the fort, and then just the early rise of Vancouver and Portland, and so you'd be able to tackle things like how shitty the Irish were treated, and then you've got all of the Chinese that came.
Yeah, people getting shanghaied in downtown Portland.
Yeah, you had all that kind of stuff too, and I just thought it would be fun. And I went down for like 3 months and just lived at the Historical Society, coming up with taking history and then creating fiction out of it.
Do you think Westerns are dead?
No, I think Westerns, I think that genre should be reignited, because I think we as a society in the United States are losing our identity of who we are. I think the Western really spoke to what our ancestors were really like. We're talking about gritty people who had balls. I mean, like, you get on a ship and you sail across the ocean. You leave everyone you know behind and you come to a new country, and then you travel across that country and it's filled with wild animals,
no laws,
and Native Americans who are really upset that you're coming into their territory and taking up land. I mean, it was a hostile, crazy place. And then on top of that, you have just your regular things like yellow fever and, smallpox and all these other things that are going on. And to settle someplace like Goldendale, Washington, like, whose idea was that?
Yeah.
Like, they must have gotten there in May. Because by August, Goldendale sucks. That's where my farm was. I thought, this will be great. We had like 240 acres out there. This will be fucking awesome. Well, in the winter, when it rains, it's a bog. So the cars sink in a foot of shit. And then in the summer, it's so hot that you don't want to even walk outside of even an awning because you're going to fry to death.
But they got a lot of turkeys out there.
Well, yeah, you do. You got turkeys and a lot of coyotes and things to shoot at.
I want to go back for a second. I couldn't agree more about how Westerns and the historical and how we forgot about that. And like watching The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, that's my favorite Civil War movie. You know, you have Glory, you have all those movies, but you really felt what it would have been like to be in the Civil War, like when they go to blow up that bridge, you know, and the general's losing it, and he's shot, and he has to keep the bridge up, but all he wants to do is blow up the bridge, and so Clint Eastwood goes and blows up the bridge with, what was that guy's name? He was in a bunch of it.
Sergio.
Yeah. Anyways, the Mexican guy.
Sergio Leone. No,
Yeah.
no, he directed the movie. Sergio Leone.
Yeah,
directed.
he's just a director. It
Trying to
was
think of
he was the ugly.
right.
Yeah. But it just seems like recently, because I'm a huge, Westerns are my favorite. I'm a huge Western buff. But lately the movies sucked. You had Django Unchained. It's great. You've had
The Hateful Eight.
The Hateful Eight, which was kind of hard to watch.
I just started that, and I'm like only halfway through it after 2 weeks.
It was, I finally got offended by a Quentin Tarantino movie. I didn't know how to feel about it. I mean, it's pretty political,
Yeah.
but what name another good? They just redid The Magnificent Seven, and it had Matt Damon in it, so I refused to watch it. Although he was in the remake of True Grit, and that was good.
Yeah,
he was good.
That
in
was a
movie.
good one. Yeah.
But see,
310 to Yuma
again,
was a remake.
remake,
remake.
remake.
Deadwood was good.
Yeah.
Well,
Deadwood was
Jeff,
great.
you need to make something then.
What about Westworld? Sci-fi Western, that was awesome. Did you watch Westworld?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
So, I mean, they're trying, but not like they used to be.
No, and period pieces are hard too because they're expensive. Because you've got to have a horse. You have to have animal wranglers out there. You have to have actors that can ride a horse. Riding a horse is dangerous. So you have to have higher insurance. Then you have to be able to go someplace where it looks and feels, and that usually means being out in the middle of BFE, which means that now you have to house all your actors and stuff.
Well,
But
there's no good Western actors right now.
that's why I think right now would be great. Well, you know who would be so. I'll probably get in a lot of trouble for this. Scott Eastwood, I think if he had the right director, could be a great actor.
Do you think he? Well, he is a good actor. Do you think?
I think Scott Eastwood, if he had the right director, could be a great actor. But he's taken on some roles where he plays minor characters.
Yeah.
And when he stars in a role, he's doing it for somebody he knows that's got a shitty writing partner. And even if they're
Could you imagine if he did like a spaghetti Western?
well, that's the thing. People
So
want to
awesome.
see Clint. They want to see him be his dad, and but he's
And there'll never
but
be another Clint Eastwood.
he had a pampered life. I mean, you need to take
But
him out,
his story is pretty
No,
good.
his story is different.
kind of beat him out.
His dad didn't give him anything, right?
None of the roles he got were
oh,
because
yeah,
of his
but
dad.
I'm talking about growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
It's not like he was growing up in South San Francisco where he's having to tangle with people and fight. And
Yeah, he wasn't. He
he
wasn't
wasn't
sleeping on an
scrappy.
air mattress in an office.
no. So but he could be great. Timothy Oliphant makes a great Western character.
It's almost like it'd be a great way to break it big with some new unknown actors.
Yeah, horror and westerns, I think, are that kind of genre where you can make the movie with anybody because it's about story and it's about character development. When you think about Deadwood, when it started,
Yeah, there's no big actors in Deadwood.
no, but now they're big.
Yeah.
Now it's over. So, and then
Westworld's got Ed Harris. He plays a great Western bad guy.
oh yeah, definitely. He's always a good actor. He was good in Pollock.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. And then they've got a lot of money. I mean, you're not talking about like something made for $1 million or $2 million. You're talking about like $5 million an episode, $10 million an episode. What's killing it are things like Game of Thrones, where they're spending $50 million to $100 million.
And who would have thought
episode.
that a medieval, besides your buddies, would have thought that would have been a good genre?
Right.
It would have blown up like it did.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's crazy. Every once in a while, they get something right.
Well, Jeff, you're an inspiring guy. Glad to be friends with you. Come back. When's the next Valhalla?
Don't know.
Well, the clock on there says like 139 days.
Yeah, it says March 31st is when we're supposed to, but that actually is incorrect because
So what are you in need of now to get this thing going?
what I need right now is some venues. So I need some.
I don't think we could fit a cage in here.
No. What I really need is some venues, some of the casinos to call me back and say, yeah, let's do this. Sponsorship, that would be great. And then obviously, if somebody was to come along and not want to steal my idea and rip me off and offer me $500,000 for 15%, that'd be awesome. But that's what happened with the Ukrainian deal is when we went to the event, they had a producer there with like 4 packets that they wanted to hand out that was essentially the same format that we do, but with live steel.
They were stealing the idea.
And they were going to try and give it to the producers. But luckily for us, the producers were like, yeah, we can't make it out to your event. So I was like, thank God for once somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. Or they would have ended up, I told them I would introduce them. And so then when they called me on 2 days after the event, and I said, hey, look, they wanted me to introduce them to the execs from HBO and from In Demand. I said, no. Like the contract said, if they were there, I'd introduce you. They weren't there. I'm not going to introduce you. If we become partners and you buy in, I'll introduce you after I sell my show. But I'm not going to. And they're like, well, but we offered you 15% of whatever you. I go, why would I want 15% of your show when I have 100% of mine?
Yeah.
And if you buy in, I have 85% of mine. That's a hell of a lot more than 15.
So do you have somebody like coaching you through these decisions, or are these just?
No, this is just me.
This is your Selena gangbanging.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, 101.
That's it. That's how you deal with, Ukrainian mobsters.
So what's the Shark Tank version of trying to get something like this, people to buy in?
The Shark Tank version. It's funny. I just did a pitch last week to the Oregon Angel Fund. So I had to do a 3-minute pitch, and I had it all memorized. And there's no way I can do it right now. But the biggest takeaway from that is, we have 5 revenue streams that come from this. A lot of people think it's just a TV show. It's like, no, man. There's the live events alone. Generate ticket sales, and then if we do the casino route, then we get a performance fee for that. But then there's the merchandising, so that could be anything from T-shirts and hoodies and so forth to eventually action figures and that kind of licensing.
Should get one of those hoodies that zips down the face, those kids wear, but have it be a helmet.
Really? I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen those? You've seen them, right?
Yeah, my son had one. Well, when you pulled the hood up,
Bring up a picture so you can see it.
Underneath the hood there was like a little face mask that would come down that you could make it look like the armor.
Yeah, you zip up your thing, but it goes all the way up into the hood, and then you can see through and there's like a mask.
That's crazy. I had no idea.
That would be awesome with the Valhalla mask.
We'll keep talking about your revenue
So
streams.
we charge vendor fees, so like sword makers, armorers, and stuff like that set up at our events pay to be in it. So it's like going to a trade show. And then
the shark ones. Oh, yeah. See, look, the skeleton. Sorry, I didn't mean to
I had
interrupt
no
you.
idea.
Yeah, check these things out.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Here, I'll go to the screen
Yeah, see all
capture.
these punk, 13-year-old kids walking around with them.
I'll have to check this out now. We could do a helmet.
Yeah,
Nice.
definitely a helmet. Definitely a helmet. There you go.
Yeah.
Motocross. So now you're talking Valhalla, like face shield.
Yeah, it could.
Nice.
All right.
All right, so if,
we get a cut of that
Yeah.
for sure.
So then we start getting into like content distribution. So that's like a subscription on the website. That's DVD,
That's
pay-per-view.
the direction a lot of the smaller like grappling and stuff are going. Is you can pay $15 a month and get the online pay-per-view subscription.
Right. You know, and then the last thing, of course, is selling ad space. So you sell space on the ring, you sell space at the events, you sell space. So that's what we've been kind of looking for, is trying to find sponsors. You know, finding an investor, it's hard because most investors, especially like Oregon Angel Fund, they're used to like tech stuff. They understand this widget does this and this is how it can scale up. They don't really see how this business model could work. But then you you tell them things like, well, you know, UFC sold for $4 billion. It was originally bought for $2 million.
Yeah.
And you see that UFC has like 1.2 million views a fight average, and Game of Thrones has 17 million views. They go, oh, wow, that's huge. They don't realize that they're selling out stadiums. And so in a lot of ways, we're kind of like the WWE model, in that we're going to tour, we're going to sell out, and we're going to make a killing on our live shows, but we're also going to have all this ancillary income coming in from the
Action
sponsoring.
figures.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Game of Thrones, Wizards of the Coast is up in Renton, and Wizards of the Coast owns Dungeons and Dragons, owns Magic the Gathering, owns those, but they were bought by Hasbro. So I was like, we need to get Wizards of the Coast Hasbro to be a sponsor. Then we'll promote their D&D games and the Magic the Gathering, and then we'll have Hasbro make a bunch of 1 foot tall, you know, G.I. Joe size action figures where you can take the helmets off and you can take the armor off, and like, who the hell doesn't want to play with knights? And I'm going, that'd be pretty badass. It'd be a nice little, you know.
Yeah, I bet your mind's just railing with ideas.
Oh yeah, we get ideas all the time. And you know, you asked me what do I want to do with this. I don't know. I'd like to see this become an international fight promotion, but more than anything, I want to see this open up the door to the next thing. Mm-hmm. I want this to be able to generate enough money that I can self-produce that TV show here and start building a media empire here in Vancouver, because we have the best place for production. Commercial property's cheap. We have no state income tax, so our workers make more money. We're close to an international airport, so we can fly just about anywhere. Got 4 seasons, so
We have a 4 seasons?
We kind of have 3 seasons.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the hotel. No, it's a Hilton.
We have spring, summer, and rain. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're like an hour from the mountains, you're an hour from the beach, you're an hour and a half from the plains.
Yeah, it's pretty centralized location to a lot of different climates.
This is an awesome place to do production. And there's an economic model that comes with that too. I do a lot of work with Washington Filmworks. What they found is for every $1 that they give out in film incentives, they get $10 back in return to the community. So it's huge. Everybody's thinking, oh, it's just going to actors. No, it goes to dry cleaners. It goes to rental houses. It goes to hotels and restaurants and caterers. It goes to the shops where we're buying bolts of fabric and materials for building stuff.
Hotels and restaurants. And
yeah, I mean, it puts it's a huge economic engine making movies.
yeah, all those people that move here need mortgages.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they got to buy houses.
Yeah.
And that puts the contractors, I mean,
Yeah.
it's an engine that
Well,
builds stuff.
let's end this thing.
Cool.
Well, you got to come back. Come back. Maybe what we can do, we can do some sort of, you know how Joe Rogan does the Fight Companion?
Sure.
Maybe we could do some sort of Fight Companion over your next, where we watch your pay-per-view
Yeah.
and we do commentary over it.
We'll dissect it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's
That'll
do
work.
it. But no, I'm serious. Glad we're friends. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And it really quick, if somebody wants to get a hold of you,
The best way to reach me is J Waters, the letter J, WATERS, at Valhalla, VALHALLA, MGL.com. That's like Mary George Larry.
and you're on Instagram,
Yeah.
Facebook.
And it's all Valhalla MGL. So Facebook, Valhalla MGL, Instagram, Valhalla MGL, YouTube. We don't have enough subscribers yet to have our own, but
You'll
it'll
get
be
there.
it'll
One
be
at a time.
Valhalla MGL. So
Go subscribe.
Perfect.
yeah, go out and subscribe to our YouTube page because we really, really need it. It's right here under that little link right there for YouTube. Click on it, subscribe.
Right here.
All right. Well, thanks again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
All right.